Welcome to Dot Rants, the comedy and tragedy of living in Singapore. It's the 30th of March 2024. Many people are still enjoying their long weekend after Good Friday, and some interesting things have happened over the last couple of weeks. First of all, let me cover a tragic event. On the 26th of March 2024, a 948-foot Singapore-registered container ship that had lost its propulsion smashed into a 4-lane bridge in the US port of Baltimore 1.5 hours after midnight, causing the bridge to collapse, sending cars and people plunging into the Patapsco River below. The registered owner of the ship is Grace Ocean, and the manager is Synergy Marine Group. Initial reports suggested the ship could be carrying some hazardous cargo, and investigations are still ongoing. Meanwhile, some folks in Singapore seem to be losing sleep over the problem of littering. I don't know what the numbers are, but I can assure you that littering has not been bothering anybody I know for the longest time. In fact, on Channel 8 some years back, a famous media personality had said that our Pasar Malams don't see many visitors because they are not dirty and messy enough. 不够脏,不够乱. Nevertheless, we are people going out on a limb to make Singapore litter-free by enhancing deterrent. Are you ready for this? Will corrective orders be more effective if done as a family? Chairman of the Public Hygiene Council, Mr. Andrew Kung, suggested the idea of offenders serving their CWO with their families. I quote, "The whole family should do it. Then the pain is not necessarily for the one person, but is the whole family going together, even with your mate," unquote. Now he added that in the case of those with children, the impact will be greater. So would it be even better as a deterrent if children are involved? Wow, is this what we should be famous for? The first indication of human civilization is not the discovery of the wheel or writing. It's the discovery of a healed femur. If you fractured your femur, you can't find food. You can't run away from predators. The discovery of a healed femur tens of thousands of years old means that someone or some people who might not even have proper clothing must have cared for and protected the owner of that piece of bone. That is the most positive sign of civilization. We all want our living environment to be clean. And let's face it, Singapore is already very clean by any standards. Shaming people on social media, suggested earlier, is the digital equivalent of throwing them into the lion's pit. 借刀杀人. Collective punishment for the family is like 连坐. Hey, Mr. Kung, to make the punishment even more effective, how about gathering an audience to watch the family being punished? Get them to cheer like they are watching a public execution. That should teach them a lesson, right? Frankly, litterbugs are disgusting, but they are a tiny minority with absolutely no influence on civic-minded people. Instead, influence should be taken out from people who rejoice at the barbarism of imperial and medieval times.
Thailand versus Singapore. Now, Singapore is very clean, it's very orderly. Nothing is out of place, you won't find any litter there. It's very peaceful, it's very quiet. Thailand is messy, it's chaotic, it smells. The traffic is horrendous, there are suspicious characters everywhere. It's full of culture, diversity, excitement, and I would pick Thailand every single time.
Next, Singapore complacently celebrated when the Lions managed a draw against their opponents from China. It was somewhat unexpected. Chinese captain Zhang Lingpeng was so humiliated that he decided to quit football, and this is what he said. 赛后想了很久，我想是时候结束我的国家队生涯了。我们现在连新加坡都无法击败， 对于我个人来说是一种耻辱。当球队在场上出现问题的时候，我们的解决方法对于我来说接受不了，感觉对不起球迷。Then, without waiting for our amnesia to set in, he did a quick U-turn and said, "Now I've thought back over it, as long as the national team needs me, whether it's as a first choice player or a substitute, or even if I don't get onto the pitch, I'm still willing to give everything I have for this team." Now, that's how CNA reported it. And I think it doesn't do any justice to the original version, which is, 我宣布退出国家队的做法原本是为了给更多的年轻人腾出位置，我相信他们能够胜任我留下的位置，但我应该更加注意表达方式。这几天经过与教练组的沟通，我认识到退出不是唯一的选择。接下来我不论是以主力或者替补的身份留下来，甚至无法上场，只要能够为国家队做出贡献，只要国家还需要我就要全力以赴，坚持到底。Now that's how you make a roti prata. Of course, we celebrated a bit too early. At the Tianjin Olympic Center Stadium on the 26th of March, Singapore suffered a 4-1 World Cup qualifier defeat by China. Now let's take a look at how the football fans from China behaved that day. Somebody said that China is not the only country that jeered at us. Take a look at this. Now, this occurred in 2017, and the Asian Football Confederation announced that they would fine the Football Association of Malaysia $30,000 for the two occasions during the recent SEA Games where fans from Malaysia's biggest soccer supporter group, Ultras Malaya, chanted "Singapore, those dogs." Now, the big difference here is that the Malaysian authorities took action. There was punishment, there was an apology, and there was assurance that it would never happen again. China? I don't think so. From football, we move to something a little more serious. The election department announced the appointment of Mr. Han Kok Juan, Director of the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore, as the new returning officer for Singapore's elections, effective 1st of April. I hope that's not an April Fool's joke, or rather I hope it is. This appointment means that Mr. Han will oversee the upcoming general election, which could happen as early as June this year, although the deadline is not until November 2025. Now, interestingly, as Senior Director Housing at the Ministry of National Development in 2015, Mr. Han had alleged gross profiteering by FM Solutions and Services at the expense of Workers' Party managed Aljunied Hougang Punggol East Town Council. However, the Court of Appeal concluded in 2022 that the town councillors and the employees of the town council had acted in good faith in awarding contracts without an open tender. Mr. Han was also mentioned in the recent Redoubt Road saga. I won't go into the details here, but as the Deputy Secretary of the Ministry of Law in January 2017, Mr. Han provided our Law Minister with a list of public properties available for rent. I'm sure that in spite of his involvement in all these cases, Mr. Han will be able to perform his duties in a fair and politically neutral manner. For some comedy, let's take a look at some of the very interesting posts from former presidential candidate Mr. Tan Kin Lian. As many of us who have been following Mr. Tan on social media would know, Mr. Tan is the proud owner of a property at Forest City. Not only that, he has a significant holding of Country Garden shares, Bi Gui Yuan. For someone who visits Malaysia so often, I expected Mr. Tan to be fairly fluent in Malay. Interestingly, I saw this post. Mr. Tan bought some ikan bilis. He saw it labelled as ikan kering and thought that ikan kering is the actual name of ikan bilis, and ikan bilis means small fish. Of course, those of us who speak even a little Malay would know that kering means dry and ikan kering means dried fish. Mr. Tan then complained about his expensive iPhone, which would not measure the temperature inside his refrigerator like his $3 digital clock would. Well, Mr. Tan, I have seen oven thermometers which are even cheaper than your $3 clock. But would you complain that your clock is useless because it melts in your oven? That's all I have for you in this episode. Do keep yourself in the loop and enjoy the rest of the weekend. See you.